Josh, at this point in the show, we sometimes pay tribute to and talk about the careers of people in film who have passed, and sometimes we have deep appreciation for their work, and sometimes we maybe don't know enough but feel like they're people that we do want to recognize. And as we're recording this, the actor Treat Williams passed away. We saw that come up on social media. I looked on Letterboxd, Josh. A scant 3% of his films I've seen, despite the fact that I know him and I know his work. But Prince in the City, that Sidney Lumet film, is one that comes up a lot as maybe his definitive performance. Our friend Michael Phillips, a regular here on Filmspotting, wrote a really nice obituary and discussed his work in the Chicago Tribune. Sometimes, as I was saying, these don't really hit us on a personal level, and fortunately, I haven't had to do this very often, or maybe more than once here in the show's history, but I did want to mention the passing of a Filmspotting listener. A longtime Filmspotting listener just got this email a couple days ago. Casey Tourangeau in Ottawa. He was a family member. He is someone who played Trivia Spotting, and some people listening may remember him, possibly had Casey on your team. If you did, you were treated to someone who probably knew a lot of the answers, as he was very astute and erudite when it came to the history of cinema, but he was also just a great appreciator of film and someone who had really great thoughts and ideas to share. He was someone who I didn't just know through the show, Josh. We've gotten to know a lot of people here and there over the course of doing this, but there are a few we've met and actually become friends with. We'd consider them friends. And when I went to Ottawa for the first time, I think in 2009, first time of doing the show, maybe the first time ever, I think, actually, to Ottawa, I said I was coming, and I got an email from Casey and his buddies, Jared and Christopher, and we hung out with a few other people, I think, but the three of us hung out, had a great meal and drinks, and talked about movies. And I knew just from that one night with those three guys that, if this was a different life and I was just someone living in Ottawa, or they were living in Chicago and we met, these are guys I'd be hanging out with all the time. We'd be best friends. So anytime I was back in Ottawa, and it happened at least one or two other times, I hung out with those guys and always had such a good time, and always stayed in touch with them over the years and got emails from them and got responses to the show. Casey's the guy who bought me The Wire 10 plus years ago. I said on the show that I hadn't finished it, or that I hadn't actually seen The Wire in its totality. And he decided that he wanted to rectify that. He bought me the whole set of The Wire on DVD and shipped it to me. Just such a thoughtful guy. And again, such a thoughtful guy when it came to film. And when I got the email, I was stunned and terribly saddened at the news. And I wanted to mention him on the show because, again, he's someone I think about a lot in terms of the show, and as someone who I had a pretty close connection with, who I just met one time and got together and bonded with.
Yeah, Casey and I were on a Trivia Spotting team once, and so this is a loss that, didn't know him quite as well as you, but it does feel real because of that, of just having that interaction and seeing his passion, his enthusiasm. Obviously nothing compared to those who loved him in real life every day. But we were also someone shared a list of Casey's 5-star films. And I thought that was a great idea for those of us who knew him through his passion, just to get a chance to see. And this is like films going back to the 20s all the way through last year. So I'm looking through this because it's a great way to get to know someone a little bit, right? Like what makes them a little unique. And you see the titles you'd expect in terms of movies that usually get 5 stars, but then you see one just like, and there are a bunch of these, but one just to call out now that jumped out at me. You see Your Name from Makoto Shinkai, who has a filmmaker who's come up because we talked about Suzume, the animated film this year from him that we really both liked. So yeah, just to see that among his list of 5-star films gives you a sense of his taste and his expansiveness. And as you said, Adam, what I remember from being on the team with him, just his passion and enthusiasm.
they did put together, his friends put together that list of those 5-star movies. And what you saw was an early version. They actually culled even more from Letterboxd. I think they're up to 160 or maybe 170 5-star movies that Casey had. We're going to link to that PDF over at filmspotting.net. If you want to get to know Casey a little bit, if you didn't know him and you want to see those movies and maybe have a great list to start filling in some blind spots for yourself, we'll also link to the Letterboxd version of that list. But again, just thinking about Christopher and Jared and all of his friends and his family who he leaves behind.